Hi, everyone. Happy fifth Sunday of Lent and fifth week of Lent. We're getting very close to the end because it's 6 weeks in Lent. So next Sunday, April 2nd, we'll start Holy Week. We'll have Palm Sunday on April 2nd. We'll have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the Triduum. And then Sunday will be Easter Sunday. So we're getting very close. Thursday and Friday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, we'll start at 7:30 both nights at Sacred Heart Church. And Saturday, the Easter Vigil on Holy Saturday, we'll start at 7:30 at St. Mary's Church. On Easter Sunday, just so everyone remembers, we'll have three masses, no evening masses, three masses, 8 a.m. in Spanish at St. Mary's, 10 a.m. in English at St. Mary's, and 12 p.m. in English at Sacred Heart. 8 a.m. in English at St. Mary's, 8 a.m. in Spanish at St. Mary's, 10 a.m. in English at St. Mary's, and 12 p.m. in English at Sacred Heart. And then this Friday will be our last, the end of March will be our last Station of the Cross in the evening. We'll do one more Station of the Cross at 6:30 p.m. at St. Mary's Church, followed by food downstairs. And then on the following Friday, which is Good Friday, we'll have 1 p.m. will be the Living Stations, which will start in the Common at the gazebo there at the Common and end at the church at St. Mary's Church. So we hope that everyone will come for that. And please bring any friends, family, neighbors. It's quite amazing. And our community has been practicing like throughout all of Lent for that. So it's going to be a great day. If you'd like to participate in that and be part of the group, there's information in the bulletins, or you can call the office as well. Excuse me. Today, as we continue our discussion on the Great Divorce, I'm on the wrong page here. We're doing one chapter, chapter 11. And we're going to have we're hearing about two encounters with other ghosts that we're watching. So all throughout here, Lewis is talking about the difference of heaven and hell, and we're slowly seeing more and more. That we saw it was two places, but now we're seeing that it's between reality and immaterial. That the closer we get to God, the more we are to reality, and the farther we are closer to nothing. And so at one point it said, like, it's hard to describe hell because you're describing nothing, and it's so close to nothing without being nothing. And so how like the ghosts, the people in hell are almost invisible. Like it's hard to see them because they just don't exist. There's so little to them now. And so we have our protagonist who we're following through, and he's watching and he's interacting with the solid people, with the angels, where he's witnessing and we're witnessing through him the different encounters between the solid people, the heavenly people, and the ghosts from hell, and how they're all warnings for us as well. Like, don't do these things because they all kind of look good. They sound good at first. They're arguments, and they're arguments that we've made at times, but they're all arguments that are self-serving. And so all the solid people, all the angels are saying, like, stop focusing on yourself, focus on God. Stop focusing on something else, focus on God. That when there's that little bit of love for other, then the solid people can do a lot with that. But when they're just focused on their pride, when they're just focused on greed, when they're just focused on getting their way, when they're just focused on something that's not God, that's when they have trouble and they're not able to solidify and fill in and to move towards heaven. And they all end up going back on the bus and going back to hell. So we have two tonight in chapter 11. And the first one starts off saying it's the most painful meeting that we witnessed. And it was between a ghost and her brother. So her brother is in heaven. And the woman is there, and she says, "Oh, it's you, Reginald." Reginald is the brother's name. Like, "Oh, it's you." And he says, "Yes, it's me. Like, I'm sorry, you were probably expecting somebody else, but I'm here for you, as well." And it turns out she was expecting her son. And she's like, "Well, where's my son? Where's Michael?" He's like, "Oh, well, Michael's here. Like, you'll see him. He's way up in the mountains. He's doing very well. He's way up in the mountains, and you'll see him." And she says, "Well, why won't he come?" And he said, "Well, if he had come, he wouldn't even be able to see you. Like, there's just so little to her." And he's so beyond that now. Like, he's so into heaven that he wouldn't be able to see her. And he says, "I've been specially trained now so that I can see you and so I can come to you as well." Remember, we talked about last time how they gave up so much. Like, they turned around and came back all that way to come to the edge and now to go back through. We said, "Michael's far up in the mountains." And she said, "Well, I want to see Michael. Like, why are you keeping Michael from me?" He's like, "We're not keeping Michael from you. We just need you, like, you need to fill in a little bit, right? You need to be solid so that he can see you." And she's like, "Okay, well, what do I have to do? Like, I'll do anything I need. Just let me know." And he's like, "Well, it's very simple. Like, you just have to stop thinking about Michael and think about someone else, right? And love someone else." And she's like, okay, no problem. Like, just let me do that so that I'll love God, whatever, so that I can get to Michael. And the Reginald, the solid person, is like, no, no, that's not it. Like, you can't, like, don't you see? You're just saying loving God is just a means to an end to get to Michael. It's really still Michael that you love. We need to have you do more than that. We need to have you do love God. He said, even if it's only the little germ of a desire of God, that we need to start the process, like just even a little bit, we can get going. You just have to focus more than just your object of affection right now needs to shift over to God. Excuse me. And then she starts getting mad at him and yelling. He's like, well, you're not a mother. You can't understand this. Like, there's no such thing. Like, if you were a mother, you would get it. And he says, you wouldn't talk like that if you were a mother. And she says that to him, like, you wouldn't say these things. And he says, no, it's not that if you were a mother, it's that if you're only a mother. He's like, that's your issue. It's not that you're a mother, but that's your only definition. It's like, that's all you're focused on. Like, what about your husband? And what about the daughter who had such trouble because you couldn't move past the death of your son because the son died young? They're like, what about those roles? And you only stayed inside. You wouldn't even go out. You wouldn't let them move houses. You wouldn't let him change his room had to stay the same. Like, you couldn't move beyond that you're only a mother. And that's the issue as well. And then she starts getting mad at God. And he's saying, well, that's not the God I believe in. The God I believe in is a God of love. Like, why, if he loved me, why did he take Michael away from me? And while, we don't always use those words, that's the problem of pain, right? The problem of evil in the world. That if God is a loving God, then why would he have allowed something that caused me harm and caused me pain? Why is there cancer? Why is there death in the world? And so for this case, it's not all cases, but for this case, Reginald, the solid person, gives two answers. He says, partly it was for Michael's sake, right? So that he could come to heaven. And she starts getting upset about that. And she's like, I was making Michael happy. He didn't need to come to heaven. He was happy with me. And then Reginald kind of interrupts her and says, human beings really can't make each other happy, only for a very short time. Like, it's not going to last. He says, and secondly, it was for your sake. So it was for Michael because it was better for him. And secondly, it was for your sake. He wanted your merely instinctive love for your child, which, even animals have, mother's natural care for that. He wanted to turn into something better. He wanted you to love Michael as he understands love, as God understands love. You cannot love a fellow creature fully until you love God. And so we hear about this, or rather we see this in friendships and in family, that when, like, a mother, a father, a friend, when that one relationship becomes everything and that becomes the center, then things become disordered, right? That when we can love God first, then we become a better husband, we become a better wife, we become a better mother and father, we become a better friend. And so it's when God enters into relationships that they really get elevated. And she starts talking about holiness. It says, she says, this is all nonsense, cruel and wicked nonsense. What right have you to say things like that about mother love? It is the highest and holiest feeling in human nature. And he goes, Pam, no natural feelings are high or low, holy or unholy in themselves, right? Just love itself. Like, I love my phone, I love my mother, I love my computer, I love my brother, or other feelings, right? Of happiness, of joy. Those are natural human feelings, right? They're not good or bad or holy or unholy. They're only holy or unholy when God is in them and when we give them over to God. That my relationships can become holy when I bring God into that situation and if I give them over to God. A person can be a mother or father just by having children. If they're going to be a holy mother and a holy father, then God has to come into that. If they're going to be a good mother and a good father, the more God they allow God into that relationship, the better they will be. It says they're holy only when God's hand is on the rein. They all go bad when they set up on their own and make themselves into false gods. If we just say, like, this relationship, my love for my son, my love for my wife, my love for my husband, that is the most important thing, then they're going to go bad. They're going to go off the rails at some point and go in the wrong direction. And she says, no, my love for Michael would never have gone bad. Not if we'd lived together for 1,000,000 years. And he says, you are mistaken. And you must know, haven't you met down there mothers with their sons saying down there in hell when you're in hell? Like, haven't you met mothers with their sons in hell? Like, that's not, it's going to go bad. You can see how it has gone bad with some people. And she's like, oh, if you mean the Guthrie woman and her son Bobby, like naming an example, he's like, no, no, no. Like, she's so annoying and she gets mad at people for not paying attention to her son, but then she gets mad at him and stuff. She goes, would never be like that because my son is perfect and he wouldn't make me upset. Which, you just see in her comments that really her love is not honest, even like it's just blind to what's going on there. And he asked her, like, what have you seen in the Guthries is what natural affection turns into in the end. It will not be converted. It's a lie, a wicked, cruel lie. How could anyone love their son more than I did? Haven't I lived only for his memory all these years? And she's like, well, there's your mistake, Pam. Like, in your heart of hearts, you know it was. Like, how is it a mistake? He's like, because you weren't there for your husband and you weren't there for your daughter. Like, you haven't even asked about your mother and you don't even seem to care about me, like your brother. Like, that became the one thing for you. And then it really wasn't all that life-giving. And then she gets so mad at him. He says, you're heartless. Everyone is heartless. The past was all I had. He's like, well, that's all you chose to have. Like, you could have been in the present. You could have been living with your family, but you chose not to. You chose to focus on the past. And she says, oh no, everything I say or do is wrong according to you, huh? And she gets upset. And we know people like that, or maybe we're people like that, that their defensive strategy is just to, or their strategy is to get defensive, right? Be like, oh, well, I guess I can't do anything right then. No problem. And so she says again, everything I say or do is wrong according to you. And this is his great answer that Lewis writes. But of course it is. Like, that's what we all find when we reach this country, when we reach heaven. We've all been wrong, right? That's the great joke. There's no need to go on pretending one was right. After that, we begin to live. When we start letting go of the things that we like kind of thought were important, and we can see this with age, right? The longer we live, we look back and we say, oh my gosh, I thought that was so important when it wasn't. Or like this friendship or that job or having the right car or being out or things like that. We learn to let things go and we say, oh, that really wasn't the important things. And even more so when we get to heaven, right? And when we die, we have to let go of all those relationships and realize that it wasn't those, it was God who was within those, hopefully, that is most important. And once we realize we were wrong about a lot of things, not everything, because we have truth in our lives, but if we the older we get, we learn to let go of some things. But after that, we really begin to live. And she gets so mad at him. She's like, why are you laughing about this? This isn't funny. Not at all. And she's like, I want to love him. That's all I want. And he goes, oh, I see. She says, oh, I see. That's the problem. Is it really, Reginald? The idea of you being hurt. So she starts kind of going after him as well. And he's like, oh, Lord love you. You needn't bother about that. Nothing. Like, don't you know that you can't hurt anyone in this country? Like in heaven, you can't hurt anyone. And often we think of like physical, right? There's no pain in heaven. There's no hunger in heaven. But there's no bruised egos in heaven, right? There's no offending people in heaven, because I would get a bruised ego because my worth is based in something other than the eternal. And you've hurt that. You've taken it away somehow, whether it's in my job or in my money or in my standing. And you take that away, my ego is going to be bruised, and that's going to hurt. But in heaven, we're talking about how everyone is the most important. Like, everyone is important because everyone is loved by God, and everyone is seen and everyone is known. And you saying something like this ghost who's almost nothing, saying something to him like, you're not going to offend me. There's nothing you can do to hurt me. I have the love of God in my life, even more than I ever did before. And you can't hurt me for that. It's that confidence that Reginald is talking about that we can have in our lives now in some form, that when we know that we are loved, when we have that confidence, then we can act accordingly, right? We can be there. And in that moment, that's the last thing we hear about them. We'll come back to them in a bit. But then them arguing, the protagonist and his teacher, the solid person that's with him from last time, they keep walking and they kind of walk away from that. And he goes, I think you've heard enough of that. You can kind of see where that's going as well. And so the protagonist says, but is there any hope for her? Like, she seems like she's just arguing with him. And he says, there is some hope that if they can take that little bit of love that she has for her son, that little bit of human affection, they can turn it into more. As long as she still holds on to that and it's not just self-serving, then there's hope for her, and it'll come back for that too. So then they start talking together, the protagonist and the solid person, that they start talking about the power of feelings and the power of emotions. Excuse me, about the love that she has for her son. Start saying, so is it just that like human emotions are dangerous and like we can't use them? And the guy is like, yes and no. He's like, human emotions are good. They can lead to great things when they're elevated by God, when you take that human natural emotion and move it into the supernatural, the divine with God, that this natural love and it becomes a supernatural love. He says, but it's also dangerous because if you take that natural love and you focus it in on itself, then there is no hope in it. It turns the person inward and away from God. And he goes, and in fact, the higher the natural virtue, the worse the fall can be. So if you take, he's saying that it can be really bad, that human emotions can be good, but you have to kind of let go of that. So the man says, brass is mistaken for gold more easily than clay is. And if it finally refuses conversion, its corruption will be worse than the corruption of what you call the lower passions. It is a stronger angel, and therefore when it falls, a fiercer devil. So the greater the potential for good is also the greater potential for bad, for pain. And so the protagonist says, I don't know that I dare repeat that on earth, sir. They'd say I was inhuman, right? Like saying how dangerous love of a mother can be. Like that'd be horrible. I think people would say, like, I'd get attacked right away. They'd be like, oh, you're so cold. It's like, well, how could I say that to somebody? And he says, like, that's not your role to say that in that moment. He says, but someone must say in general what's been unsaid among you this many a year. This is important. As we get farther in the book, we're getting closer and closer to what heaven is, the way Lewis is describing it. He says that love, as mortals understand the word, isn't enough. Love, the way mortals understand the word, isn't enough, right? That just saying everyone who has love in their life is good. Like, no, like love, human natural love is everywhere. Like every human can have that, no matter what they believe in, if they're a good person or a bad person. Even scripture tells us, like, what good is it to love your neighbor? Like, even like the thief does that. Or what good is it to say, I gave a present to my son? Even the thief does that. Like, even a bad person does that. That we need to think of love the way God knows love, the way God understands love, the way God sees love, and that self-sacrificial, the divine love, it needs to raise up more. So we can go back to that woman and see that she was loving her son in life and in death only to please herself, to say, I'm a good mother, right? That's the danger there. Not that she loved her son, but what was behind that as well. And so we start saying, like, well, like, couldn't you just say she loves her son? And he says, the solid person says, like, I don't know what's going to happen there in that relationship, but I bet right now, I'm trying to find it in here. Like, I bet right now she's demanding her son is given to her and she can take him back to hell. Like, is that love? Like, I love my son so much, I want him to leave heaven where he's happy and I want him in hell with me. Like, no, that's not love. She just wants to possess him. She just wants the control. She just wants that to make herself feel better. But that's not really love if she's willing to sacrifice the happiness of someone else. And so we have to think about love as well for other people, that whether it's when we love somebody else and we know they need help with something, but we're not willing to make ourselves uncomfortable to do it. We're not willing to sacrifice something. We're not willing to sacrifice money or time or our social standing to help somebody else. And we're not willing to call on somebody else because we don't want to make them uncomfortable, right? Or we're willing to, for my sake, force other people to be uncomfortable, right? And say, you need to give us stuff up. You need to do things so that I'm happy. Then we're not loving them the way that we should. We're loving ourselves and forcing them to do things for us, like that. Okay, then the second part, now, like I said, there was going to be two interactions. As they were walking, excuse me, they come along another ghost, and this ghost has a lizard, like on his neck, on his shoulder, sitting there, and the lizard's whispering in his ear. Different things, and his tail is whipping around behind him, a little red lizard. And even the man says they can hear him say, he couldn't tell what the lizard was saying at first. But the man says, shut up, like, and argues with him. Like, I'm telling you to stop talking. And so the lizard stops talking for a moment, but his tail is whipping around. And then you hear, like, he turns around and he starts, the ghost with the lizard on his shoulder, starts turning around, going back to the bus. And you hear, like, off so soon. and it's a big booming voice, and it's this fiery angel that is there. So we've seen the humans, and now we're seeing like angels as well. It's a big fiery, the seraphim, a big fiery presence. So you can see it's a man, but it's a big fiery presence. And the ghost says, "Yes, I'm off. Thanks for all of your hospitality. It was very nice of you. It's no good. Like this little guy can't stay here, and so I need to take him back." And so the angel says, like, "Would you like to remove him? Do you want me to remove him for you?" And he goes, "Oh, that would be great." And so the angel says, "Can I kill it? Can I kill him?" And he keeps asking that. And the man's like, "Oh no, like, well, I don't think we need to go that far." And the angel says, "Can I kill it?" And he keeps coming up with things like the angel moves a little closer. And the guy's like, "Oh, you're hurting me. Like, back off, because the heat from him." And he goes, "Can I kill it?" And the angel keeps coming closer. And he keeps coming up with reasons why. He says, "You didn't say anything about killing it first. Like, I hardly meant to bother you with it. It was so small. Don't worry about it." And the angel's like, "It's the only way. Shall I kill it?" And he's like, "Okay, well, maybe let's talk about it. Maybe I'm willing to be open to that, but I just want to keep thinking about it. Like it was just a thought. Like I'm embarrassed now. I'm sorry." And the angel says again, like, "Can I kill it? May I kill it?" He goes, "Well, let's discuss it later. Like we'll take time for it." And the angel says, "There is no time. May I kill it?" And he's like, "I'm sorry. I've never been meant to be such a nuisance. Like, look, it's gone to sleep now. It's not even bothering me. Let's just leave him there. It's fine right now. I'm sure I can control him." And the angel says again, "May I kill it?" And the man is like, "Honestly, I don't think there's even like it's not necessary anymore. I'm sure we'll be able to keep it in order. It's just a gradual process. I'll slowly ask him to leave. I'll get rid of him eventually. It'll work." Um, and the angel says, "The gradual process is no use at all. That's not going to work. Can I kill it?" And says, "Don't you think so? Like the gradual process?" "Well, I'll think over what you said carefully. Like if you really think it can, just give me some time to think about it. Some days, some nights. Like I'll come back another day." And the angel says, "There's no other day. All days are present now. Can I kill it?" He says, like, "Get back. Like, you're going to kill me if you do this. If you take him away, then I'm going to die." And the angel says, "No, that's not going to happen. Can I kill it?" "Like, why are you hurting me so much?" And the angel says, "I didn't say it wouldn't hurt you. I just said it won't kill you. Like, I'm not going to kill you. Can I kill it?" And then he's like, "Oh, you must think I'm a coward, but isn't that? Like, really, it isn't that. Like, let me just go back. I'll think about it. I'll come back the first chance I get." He says, like, "This moment contains all moments. Like, choose now. Now is important." He's like, "Why are you torturing me? Like, you could have done it already, right? Like, why don't you kill it? Like, why do you keep asking me? You could have been done, and you could have been freed of this." And the angel says, "I cannot kill it against your will. It's impossible. Have I your permission? Like, can I kill it? Are you giving me allowed to?" And even the angel's hands are like almost around the lizard, but not quite. And so finally he says, like, "Fine." Um, oh no, then the lizard starts like kind of fighting back too. He's like, "Don't let him do it. Like he's means it. If you give him permission, he's gonna kill me. I'm gonna be gone. Like, how are you gonna live? Like, yeah, he can live without me, but you need me." And so this lizard is like, "You need me in my life. Like, I think this is really good. Like, don't worry. Like, I'll be nicer. Keep you calm. Like, I won't go crazy. It'll be good. It'll be good. It'll be good." And the angel again says, "Have I your permission?" He's like, "It's going to kill me if I let this go. Like, it won't. Like, even if you did, like, how is that worse? Like, you're already dead." He's like, "You're right. Like, it wouldn't even be bad if I died with it as well." So then the angel says, like, "Then may I? Can I kill it?" He says, "Damn and blast you. Go on and do it. Get it over with. Do what you like," bellowed the ghost. But ended whimpering, "God help me. God help me. God help me." In the next moment, the ghost gave a scream of agony, such as I've never heard on earth. The burning one, the angel, closed his crimson grip on the reptile, twisted it, while it bit and writhed, and then flung it, broken back on the turf. Okay, so before I tell you what happens next and we go through that, just we can see um, like how we react to these temptations. So this lizard now we're going to hear in a second, and I'll tell you now, it's lust. It's lust in his life. It's the sin in his life that's there. So for him, it's lust. For maybe you, that lizard would be something else. That animal, that grotesqueness would be something else. Greed, sloth, whatever it is. But for him, it's lust. And it's when we think of lust in the world now, whether it's sex before marriage, or adultery, or pornography, or masturbation, or the way we look at people, in an unhealthy manner, we get these addictions where they become part of us. And even when we try, like the man says, like, shut up, like he wants it gone, he even thinks about it. Like that's what addictions become, right? A person who's addicted to drugs, they often know, they're like, oh, if I could just get rid of this thing, right? Or whatever we're addicted to. And so it's so difficult. We know we want it gone. And yet when we have that opportunity, like the angel saying, I can kill it, I can take it away, they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe I can just control it. I'll take steps. And he was like, no, that's not going to work. Same for us. When we think of our addictions, we just need to stop. We can't be like, well, I'll tone it back a bit, right? If I'm watching pornography, I'll just watch like once a week because we know it doesn't work. It ramps up again, right? If I'm just going to do drugs, I'll just do it on the weekends. No, because it's going to ramp up again, right? That when we have these addictions, they're hard to control. And even when we have it, we're like, oh, but if I give it up, like I'm gonna die. Like this is who I am. It's just, I can't imagine a world without this. And the angel's like, it won't kill you. And God's like, it won't kill you to give these things up. And yet it feels like it will. Like it's such a part of us that it's gonna hurt. Excuse me. It's gonna hurt there. Um, and over and over. And then at the end, we, as every person with addiction does, we hit that rock bottom where we get to the point where like, yeah, I'd rather be dead, right? That's just, you're right. It'd be better for me to die than for me to keep going with this. And then that's when he says, fine, just take it, right? And that's when we in our lives are eventually like, fine, I need help, whether it's from God or from someone else, like, I need help. And he says at the end, God help me, God help me, God help me. That's what each of these ghosts that we've encountered wouldn't say, right? The mother from early in the chapter, from all the other chapters, all the solid people kept saying, like, you just need to turn to God. That's all he's asking of you, right? With that one step, like everything else will flow. And yet none of the other ghosts would, and they kept disappearing. And this ghost does. He says, God help me, God help me, God help me. And this is what happens. So the angel rips off the lizard, twists its neck, and throws it down. And he says, for a moment, I could make out nothing distinctly. But then I saw between me and the nearest bush, unmistakably solid, but growing every moment solider, the upper arm and shoulder of a man. Then brighter still and stronger, the legs and hands, the neck and golden head materialized while I watched. And if my attention had not wavered, I should have not seen the actual completing of a man, an immense man, naked, not much smaller than the angel. So he witnessed this ghost turning into the solid person, that what we've been hearing about the whole time, and becoming heavenly. He was able to let go of the thing that was holding him back, that lust. He was able to let go of it and have God take it away through the angel. He was able to trust in God instead of trusting in that and holding on to that lizard, right? That addiction that we have in our life. That when we can let that go, then that's when we become closer to reality, closer to God. And then this is what happened too. What distracted me was the fact that at the same moment, something seemed to be happening to the lizard. At first, I thought the operation had failed. So far from dying, the creature was still struggling and even growing bigger as it struggled. And as it grew, it changed. Its hinder parts grew rounder. The tail, still flickering, became a tail of hair and flickered between huge and glossy buttocks. Suddenly, I stared back, rubbing my eyes. What stood before me was the greatest stallion I had ever seen, silvery white, but with mane and tail of gold. It was smooth and shining, rippled with swells of flesh and muscle, whinnying and stamping with its hooves. And at each stamp, the land shook and the trees dindled. So this lizard, this small, gross thing, turned into the most beautiful, powerful stallion. And so the man, this new solid man, turned to the angel and bowed and embraced him. And then he turned to the stallion and embraced the stallion. And then they rode off. He jumped on the stallion, they rode. And then the protagonist watched him go through the fields and get into the foothills of the mountain. And then going up the mountain, he said, I strained my eyes, I could see him. And eventually they disappeared into the sun as well. That is some of my favorite parts here. That it says, we're talking about lust specifically, but you can talk about lots of different things, that through what was his greatest weakness now becomes his strength. And so in here, I'm trying to find it right now. It's one of my favorite lines in this book. Let me just see if I can find it. I'll find it in a second, but I underlined it. So here it is. Nothing, not even the best and noblest, can go as it is now. Like nothing can go to heaven when it's earthly. Excuse me. Nothing, not even the lowest and most bestial, will not be raised again if it submits to death. Right? So even the lizard submitted to death by force, but then it grew and was made amazing. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. So the lizard was the natural body, the horse was the spiritual body. Flesh and blood cannot come to the mountains, not because they are too rank, but because they are too weak. Right? Not that God hates that, hates the human flesh, the human natural, that it's created, it's good, but it's too weak, it's not good enough. Right? Like we're going from earth to heavenly, to more reality, that here we're limited, that our bodies are good, and yet nothing compared to the glory of heaven as well. That's why we appear as ghosts in the story here. The humans are appearing as ghosts, being made solid. So that man took on a living, he went from the natural to the spiritual. And here's my favorite line. Lust is a poor, weak, whimpering, whispering thing compared with that richness and energy of desire, which will arise when lust has been killed. So lust is a natural human reaction. But when we put that down, when it submits to death, it turns into love, right? So much greater. Lust is small and nothing, even though it feels so strong in us sometimes, like it's going to control me and I have to act on it. It's nothing compared to the power of love, the greatness of love. Instead of turning in, it's turning out. Instead of serving simply me and my small desires, it's so close to nothing. I get to look out and love others and love God and love glory and love eternity. That lust is a poor, weak, whimpering, whispering thing compared to the glory of God, compared to the glory of love and divine love. It's amazing. And so in our lives, we can often see that our weaknesses and our sins, which we're embarrassed of so often, when we overcome them through grace and through God's glory, they become our strengths, right? So when I was young, I would lie. When I was young, I would steal. But now that I've put those down, honesty is so important to me and truth is so important to me, right? That now I can talk about those things and I can help other people with them. That when you, someone who has done drugs, they've come through, now it's their greatest strength that they can help others in that position, right? That they can become sponsors and they can give witnesses. That whatever was our weakness can become our strength. That lust for the man, which was like keeping him back, now was the way that he got so quickly to the mountains, right? That it happened so quickly. He got so quickly to heaven. It was amazing. The chapter ends by the protagonist asking and saying, like, so are we saying that man's lust, was better than the woman's love for her son? And he said, well, we have to, again, be very careful about what we're calling love, right? That she wants them in hell. Like, is that really love? That when we look at our lives, especially during this Lent, we look at our desires, we want to think, excuse me, are we using the words kind of too casually sometimes, right? Like, the people that I say I love, am I really acting in love for them, or am I saying I love them because of what they do for me, right? The lust, he was able to get rid of, and was able to, or he did, not he was able to, he did get rid of, and it was able to become the way to glory because he was able to turn away from himself. If this mother here can just turn away from looking at what makes her happy to others, then she has the same chance of going to an even greater, right? Because motherly love was very high on the kind of hierarchy of loves as well too. It's not the highest, but it's very up high, but therefore it could be very low when it's not done well. Excuse me. Okay, so that's where it ends there. Those two things, great chapters. The next time we're going to end, we're going to hear kind of Lewis's final clarity on like the great difference between heaven and hell, and we'll see how, again, his point here is that heaven is reality, and the closer we are to reality, the closer we are to heaven now and later. And hell is nothing, or as close to nothing as you can get. And the farther we are from reality now, the closer we are to hell now, right? We want to be close to God and therefore close to heaven. As we're going through Lent, I'm glad that you're continuing to watch this. Share it with others, please, and to read the book if you are. But even if you're not reading, if you're kind of listening along, like Lewis is giving us little scenarios that we can possibly see ourselves in. I know I can see myself in many of them too in different ways, but we want to to make sure that we're seeking reality and seeking God, not seeking ourselves and seeking the base, but looking up towards the spiritual as well. God bless. Happy 5th week of Lent. Thank you for sharing. I look forward to our last time on next week for the 6th week of Lent, which will be Holy Week. Please check the bullets in the website, Facebook page, and let us know what questions you have. God bless everyone.